Hello, this is Izzy, and this is my 48-hour survival guide graphic design 3B project. For this project, it was about going on an adventure to somewhere we'd never been for 48 hours and really pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone to try research our surroundings. We were given the brief early on in the project and encouraged to look at the small, insignificant, discarded, or unnoticed. I found this really interesting, and I really liked how it made me push myself out of my comfort zone, trying to take in my surroundings more than I ever had. The main focus of the project was ethnographic research. So, to practice that, as a class, we went to Cramond Island. This really helped me to practice documenting my personal experience of a place, as opposed to just what was around me. I did this through sketchbooks and photos and really got me warmed up for the actual project. So, for my destination, I chose Aberlady Submarine Wrecks. I was really drawn to this site because I liked the ideas of wreckage and past like that I'd be able to investigate, and it was also far enough out of Edinburgh that it was an adventure whilst not being too expensive or inaccessible. I also found a local Airbnb that I could stay in for the night, meaning I could be there for as long as possible. And so when I got there, I started my sketchbooks. I documented my adventure there, as well as the walk I went on to try find the submarines on the first day. I took note of everything that really stood out to me on my expedition, whether that be flora, fauna, architecture, bird formations, and many more, using a variety of different medias. When I finally reached the submarines, after wanting to turn around so many times, I spotted the silhouette of the wreckage on the horizon just before the sun had set. This was a really cathartic experience and made the submarines seem like a sort of monument. This kind of theme of monument was something I ended up taking forwards with my project, influenced by this moment. So the next morning, I finally made it out to the submarines at low tide. I think this experience was very different to how I thought it was going to be. It ended up actually being quite a scary experience, and I found myself quite intimidated of the wreckage. Something about its size or the rising tide. It wasn't what I thought it would be. So these were my sketchbook responses to the submarines, where I explored different interpretations of the wreckage, drawing engineering drawings of the eroded areas, tracing patterns in the sand, using string to show the tide rising and falling. All of this exploration really helped me kind of clarify what I thought about the submarines, how I could interpret them, and potentially visually take them forward. So I moved onwards, trying to kind of form these ideas into something that I could potentially become my artifact or my journal. I looked at ideas of pressure, submersion, negative space, but in the end I didn't feel like these ideas I was coming up with were particularly unique to my personal experience of the place. So instead I decided to focus on my journey, my emotional journey having been there. So when I was at the submarines, I felt fear and dread about the tide rising. I felt intimidation at the scale, and I felt a kind of eerie sense because of this sense of death around the submarines, and a bit of an uneasiness about the sinking sensation. So then I decided to go into my sketchbook and try and represent the forms of the submarine influenced by my emotions. I found myself really influenced by the rib-like shapes of the wreckage at certain points, and really started experimenting with that in my sketchbook, looking at different ways that I could present the shapes and how the shapes were influenced by those feelings I felt. These were my first models of what I thought that could look like using polymer clay. I really liked the eeriness and the kind of hand-like shape of these, but they didn't quite capture the fear or the intimidation that I wanted to. So I went back to the drawing board and decided to make them out of metal. I found that the sharp edges and the abrupt angles really helped to convey the intimidation and fear that I had around the wrecks, and I was really happy with these forms in the end. Then it came on to how I would have to present the project. We needed a journal and an artifact. So, in line with the wartime history of the submarines, I decided to present my project as a mission, with a mission log for the journal and a mission video capturing those metal shapes for an artifact. This format was really useful to be able to incorporate my written accounts of the journey, as well as the visual element of including the metal shapes in the mission video. So the way that I created the journal was using a risograph printer. When I designed them, I added old paper textures, stamps, things that I'd found in my research about wartime documentation that really made it look as realistic as possible. However, the decision I made was not to go with kind of tea-stained sepia tones. I prefer the kind of monochromatics. That was a bit more eerie, which was exactly what I was going for. For the mission video, I presented it as a USB within that folder, so this mission was all contained to that folder and someone could kind of go on the emotional experience if they had a look through the folder and watch the video. The way I made the video was by projecting my footage from the mission, as well as videos of World War II submarines, the tide rising, submarines submerging, all in an attempt to really hopefully take the viewer on the same emotional journey I went on. So through the sculptures as well as the projection, hopefully it did that. So yeah, there you have it, just a little snippet of the video. When I was making this video, I found the projection to be a really striking visual, and I really wanted my peers to experience that firsthand because I think it evoked the emotions more than anything did. So I rented a room out in the studio so they could experience the projection and the audio firsthand, and it was much more immersive and proved to be much more effective. So yeah, there you have it. That's my project, the mission log, the mission video, and the installation. All an attempt to recreate my mission to Aberlady and hopefully take the viewer on the same emotional experience I had around the wrecks.